The restaurant lights flickered against the glass as Melissa Hayes, a 32-year-old single mom, clutched her son's small hand and whispered, "Just hold on, buddy. Mommy's got this." But before she could explain why she was late, with payment, the manager's voice sliced the air like a blade. "Get out. We don't serve people like you here." Gasps rippled. Her son's lip trembled. Melissa's face burned with humiliation until the doors swung open and a man in a tailored suit strode inside. Every eye turned. The Millionaire CEO himself. What he said next silenced the entire room. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Asterisk asterisk. Did you hear me? The manager barked, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're holding up paying customers. Take your kid and leave." Melissa's throat tightened. She had worked double shifts just to give her son, Jacob, a small treat, a warm meal in a place where laughter filled the air instead of overdue bills. And now, she was being shoved out like trash. Her son's tiny voice cut through the silence. "Mommy, did we do something bad?" The restaurant went still. A few customers glanced away, ashamed, but none stepped forward. Melissa's eyes stung as she forced a smile. "No, honey, we didn't." Just as she gathered her strength to walk out, the heavy doors swung wide. A tall man in a navy suit, eyes sharp as steel, stepped inside. His presence was commanding. Every conversation halted. Every laugh died in the air. "Melissa Hayes?" he said, voice calm but carrying authority that made the walls seem smaller. The manager blinked. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding," but the man cut him off. "No, I heard everything." He stepped closer, his gaze cold as winter on the trembling manager. "And you'll regret it." Melissa's knees almost buckled. She recognized him from the news. Jonathan Pierce, the elusive CEO of one of the biggest firms in the state. But what in the world was he doing here, calling her by name? Asterisk. The room was suffocatingly silent, the kind of silence that pressed on the chest, stealing breath. The manager stammered, his polished arrogance cracking under the weight of Jonathan Pierce's presence. Melissa, clutching Jacob's hand, couldn't piece together how this man knew her name. Jonathan's eyes softened as he looked at Jacob, fear trembling in the boy's wide brown eyes. Then he turned to Melissa. "You shouldn't have been treated like this," he said firmly, his voice low yet carrying enough force to silence even the clinking of glasses. Melissa's lips parted, but no sound came out. She wasn't used to being defended, certainly not by someone like him. The manager tried again, sweat darkening his collar. "Mr. Pierce, sir, if I'd known she was connected to you, I would—" Jonathan's glare sliced through him. "Connected? To me? You didn't need to know who she knew. You only needed to know she's a paying customer, a mother trying to feed her child. And instead, you humiliated her." Every face in the restaurant turned away from the manager, their smirks gone. Shame dawning like an unforgiving spotlight. Melissa's throat constricted. She bent down and whispered to Jacob, "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll go home." Her instinct was to retreat. It always had been. Years of scraping by had taught her to shrink when others tried to shove her out. But Jonathan's voice stopped her cold. "You're not going anywhere." The command in his tone made Jacob clutch tighter to her arm. Melissa straightened slowly, heart racing. Jonathan reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a folded paper thick, embossed with gold trim. He laid it flat on the counter in front of the stunned manager. "As of this morning, I bought this establishment, effective immediately." The manager's mouth fell open. A gasp broke from a corner booth. Melissa's heart thundered in disbelief. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "You're fired. Get out of my sight before I have security. Drag you out." The man sputtered, his once booming voice reduced to a pitiful whimper. He fumbled with his tie, muttered something inaudible, and bolted out the back door. Jonathan turned, the sharp lines of his face softening as he looked at Melissa. "Now let's try this again. Melissa, what do you and your son want for dinner?" "Order anything. It's on me." Melissa blinked, trembling. Her pride rose, clashing with gratitude. Why are you doing this?" Jonathan's gaze didn't waver. "Because years ago, when no one else noticed, you did something for me that I never forgot." Her breath caught. Memories blurred, the endless nights she worked at a diner in her 20s, juggling trays, wiping tables, handing out free refills. With tired smiles, had she? Jonathan leaned closer, his voice lowering so only she could hear. "I was just a young man then, broke, humiliated, with nothing but a crumpled resume in my pocket. You gave me a free coffee when I couldn't afford one. You told me not to give up." Melissa's eyes widened, tears stinging. She remembered now a weary young man sitting at the corner booth, his head buried in his hands. She had slid him a steaming cup and whispered, "Don't quit. Tomorrow could look different." And now he was here, a man who had built an empire. Standing before her like some impossible twist of fate, her knees weakened. She tried to form words, but Jacob tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy," he whispered, "is he an angel?" The innocence in his voice cracked something inside her chest. Jonathan crouched down, meeting Jacob's gaze at eye level. "Not an angel, buddy. Just someone who knows your mom deserves better than this." Melissa's tears finally slipped. Free, she wasn't the type to cry in public, but the floodgates broke. For so long, life had been about surviving, stretching every dollar, swallowing every insult, enduring every cold shoulder. And now, someone was standing up for her. Jonathan stood again, turning to the room full of gawking patrons. His voice boomed with quiet authority. "Let this be a lesson. The measure of character isn't in wealth or status, it's in how you treat people who can't give you anything in return. Tonight, every meal in this restaurant is free, in honor of this woman and her son." The room erupted in murmurs of astonishment. A few people even clapped, though awkwardly, their shame still hanging heavy in the air. Melissa wanted to protest, wanted to say she didn't need charity, but Jonathan wasn't offering pity. He was making a statement about dignity, about kindness, about remembering the small gestures that could change a life. She whispered, "You didn't have to do this." He looked at her, his expression a mixture of strength and something softer, something almost vulnerable. "Yes, I did. Because you showed me kindness when I had nothing. And I've waited a long time to repay that debt." Melissa's chest heaved. Jacob pressed into her side, still too young to fully grasp what was happening, but sensing that the world had tilted in his mother's favor for once. As Jonathan gestured for the servers to bring menus, Melissa sat, hands trembling on the table. Her heart was racing not just from the shock, but from something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to hope. For years, she had been told she wasn't enough. Tonight, Jonathan Pierce had shattered that lie with a single act of defiance. And deep down, Melissa knew this wasn't just about dinner. This was about a door opening, a door she never thought would exist for someone like her. And across the table, Jonathan's eyes never left hers, as if silently promising, "This is only the beginning." Asterisk. Melissa's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. She hadn't felt this visible in years too long, really. Life as a single mom had taught her to blend into the background, to endure quietly. But tonight, she was center stage. Every eye in the restaurant locked on her. Jonathan slid into the booth across from her, his suit sharp against the cracked leather seat. The servers, still shaken from the scene, rushed nervously to lay menus down. Melissa could barely focus. Her son, Jacob, leaned against her shoulder, his small body warm, grounding her. Jonathan's voice softened, but it carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "Melissa, I know this is overwhelming, but I meant what I said. You changed my life. And now, I want to change yours." Her chest tightened. "Look, I didn't give you that coffee all those years ago expecting anything. I was just doing my job." His lips curved faintly. "And that's exactly why it mattered. You had nothing to gain, yet you offered kindness. You saw me when no one else did." Her pulse quickened. She wasn't used to hearing those words. Most of her life had been people not seeing her, or, worse, dismissing her. The servers placed steaming plates in front of them, roasted chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, warm bread that filled the air with comfort. Jacob's eyes lit up, his hunger impossible to hide. Melissa stroked his hair, her heart aching at the simple joy on his face. "Eat, sweetheart," she whispered. Jonathan leaned back, watching them quietly. But there was a storm in his gaze, like he was wrestling with more than he was letting on. Finally, Melissa spoke, voice low but firm. "Why now? Why me? You could repay that memory 1,000 different ways, donations, scholarships, anything. Why single me out?" His eyes locked on hers, unflinching. "Because debt of gratitude isn't about money, it's about people. And because I know how cruel the world can be to those who fight alone." Her breath hitched. Those words cut deep, too close to the truth she lived every day. But something still nagged at her. "You don't even know me anymore. I'm not that girl in the diner. I'm just trying to keep my head above water. And my son, he doesn't need false hope." Jonathan leaned forward, his voice steady, almost pleading. "This isn't false hope, Melissa. I want to offer you a job, not charity. A chance. I need someone I can trust in my company, and I know your worth." Her fork clattered against the plate. The words stunned her, knocking the breath from her chest. "A job? At your company?" He nodded. "Executive assistant. Salary enough to cover your bills, your son's schooling, and give you room to breathe. No tricks, no strings." Melissa's first instinct was to refuse. Pride burned inside her like a warning fire. Too many times she'd been made to feel like she owed people, that her survival was tied to favors she'd never be able to repay. "You don't understand," she said, voice trembling. "I've been told help before. And every time it came with a price." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Not from me. I know what it's like to be desperate, to mistrust even kindness, because you think it's a setup. But this isn't a setup, Melissa. It's a door. And you deserve to walk through it." Her eyes brimmed with tears she fought to hold back. Jacob tugged her sleeve again. "Mommy, can we trust him?" The innocence in his voice cut her deeper than any blade. She stared at Jonathan, searching for cracks, any hint of arrogance or manipulation. But his eyes held only sincerity, steady and unwavering. Still, the weight of humiliation from moments earlier pressed on her. The manager's cruel words echoed, "We don't serve people like you." She'd been shoved out so many times that she no longer believed doors would ever open for her. She swallowed hard. "What if I fail? What if I can't keep up in your world?" Jonathan's expression softened, his voice a steady anchor. "Then I'll stand beside you until you can. Because when I was drowning, you didn't let me sink." The words cracked something inside her. Years of exhaustion giving way to something fragile, something she hadn't felt in years, belief. But before she could reply, a sharp voice cut across the restaurant. "Well, isn't this touching?" Heads turned. The former manager had returned, face red with humiliation, a security guard at his side. His bitterness dripped with venom. "She's just a single mom, Jonathan. You're a fool if you think she belongs anywhere near your company." Melissa's stomach dropped. Jacob pressed into her side, frightened. The crowd shifted, whispers rising again. The humiliation she thought she'd escaped came rushing back, flooding her veins with fire. Jonathan rose slowly, towering, his presence a storm ready to break. His words were ice. "You think she doesn't belong? Let me tell you what doesn't belong: your arrogance, your cruelty. Men like you poison everything you touch. And that's why I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." The manager sneered, but his confidence faltered under Jonathan's fury. Still, his parting shot was aimed like a dagger. You can dress her up all you want, but people like her never last. She drag you down. The words landed hard. Not just in Melissa's chest, but in her deepest insecurities. Her fists clenched under the table. For the first time in years, she didn't stay silent. She stood, voice shaking but strong. You're wrong. I've survived more than you'll ever understand. I've raised my son alone, worked jobs that broke me, and still kept going. I don't need your approval to prove I belong. The room went silent. Even Jonathan seemed taken aback by the fire in her tone. Melissa's tears were no longer of shame, they burned with defiance. She turned to Jacob, kneeling to meet his eyes. And you, sweetheart, you'll never believe the lies people like him say about us. We are enough. Jonathan's chest rose, pride flickering across his face. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sleek envelope, placing it in Melissa's hand. Inside is my offer. It's yours if you want it. But whether you take it or not, remember this. You already proved tonight that you belong. Melissa clutched the envelope, her heart racing. The humiliation, the fear, the doubt, they all still lingered. But now, alongside them, something else had taken root. Strength. She looked around the room, realizing how many eyes were on her, but she no longer felt small. She wasn't the forgotten woman scraping through shifts in silence. She was the woman who had faced cruelty and stood tall in front of her son Dot as Jonathan gently placed his hand on the table. His gaze steady, Melissa finally exhaled. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was beginning. And deep down, she knew this wasn't just about a job. It was about rewriting the story of who she was and who she could be.